Good morning, friends, students, and lovers of English. This is Professor Dr. Deepika Srivastav from the English department. I have been posting English videos on YouTube on a regular basis. I presume by now I am well known and you are familiar with me and my lectures. Let me begin today's lecture. The topic is Anita Desai, a psychological journey of a literary artist. Before I delve into the nuances of this topic, a brief introduction is mandatory regarding women novelists in Indian fiction in general and Desai's early influences in particular. In the 21st century, several women novelists in Indian fiction have made a mark for themselves. We have read Kamla Markande, Ruth Prover Jhabwala, Nayanthara Sehgal, Veena Pentel, Atiya Hussain, Arundhati Roy, Shashi Deshpande, Jhumpa Lahiri, Jayashree Chatterjee, and Anita Desai, to name a few. Anita Desai is undoubtedly the most significant and remarkable writer of this group, having written novels which have been acclaimed both in India and abroad. But Desai has evoked mixed responses from her readers. Her novels focus only on inner realities and psychic rigmaroles which may not be widely appreciated. Let's make a quick survey of her childhood influences. She was born as Anita Mazumdar in the Queen of Hill Stations, Mussoorie, to a Bengali father and a German mother. By the way, even my bureaucrat husband, Sri R.M. Srivastav, was unaware of this fact, though he spent many months at LBS National Academy of Administration, Mussoorie, first as an IPS probationer and then as an IAS probationer. He has suggested that the government erect a landmark for the living legend at her birthplace. Okay, I carry on. Because of her German mother, she was having a very keen interest in Western literature and music from a tender age. She attended the best of schools and did her BA honors in English from the prestigious Delhi University in 1957. She married Ashwin Desai in 1958. She has lived in Calcutta, now Kolkata, Pune, Chandigarh, and India's capital, Delhi. These cities left an indelible impact on her as all her novels are based in one or the other of these cities. From a young age, she was bent on being a writer. She based her novels on Indian settings and characters. Her novels have continued to explore a concern with imagery built on places and cities that affect her characters. She was an ardent admirer of Emily Bronte. Her Wuthering Heights attracted Desai towards the Gothic mystery. Right from her childhood, she had an interest in philosophical concern too and delved upon the meaning of life. Such a spiritual orientation at a young age could be the outcome of reading E. M. Foster. She was also obsessed with the past, the city, the hill station, big villas with gardens, and decadent families. These fascinated her tremendously. Since she belongs to the upper class, she wrote about affluent, well to do families. Later, she concentrated on the less privileged and shifted her focus on commoners. Though Desai's first language was German, she writes only in English. The formative influences that had a deep impact on her mind were Lawrence, Virginia Woolf, James Joyce, and Proust. Later influences were poems of Berryman and short stories of Flannery O'Connor. Her major works are Cry the Peacock, 1963, Voice in the City, 1965, Where Shall We Go This Summer, 1975, Fire in the Mountains, 1977, Clear Light of the Day, 1980, The Village by the Sea, 1982, In Custody, 1984, Baumgartner's Bombay, 1987, Journey to Ithaca, 1995, Fasting, Feasting, 1999, The Zigzag Way, 2004, and The Artist of Disappearance, her last work in 2011. Fire on the Mountains won the Winifred Holtby Memorial Prize, while Clear Light of the Day, In Custody, and Fasting Feasting were shortlisted for the prestigious Booker Prize. In Custody was made into a film too. Currently, Desai is Professor of Humanities at Massachusetts Institute of Technology in Boston. She is winner of Sahitya Academy Award for English and Padma Bhushan, the third highest civilian award. Nonetheless, while she feels about India as an Indian, she thinks about it as an outsider, probably because of her German mother. Her Oga has explored lives of outsiders within Indian society. Her fiction has covered themes of women's oppression and quest for identity, family relationships, crumbling of traditions, and anti Semitism. The literary example which Desai emulated was that of another migrant to India of German origins, Ruth Prower Jhabwala. Though some critics detect a Western disdain for Indian customs, ultimately Desai's literary work is not divided along Western and Eastern lines. Desai has inspired many talented young writers. She influenced her own daughter, Kiran Desai, whose second novel, Inheritance of Loss, received the Booker Prize. Desai can be considered as the contemporary of European, American, and Commonwealth modernists. Iris Murdoch, Saul Bellow, Patrick White, and Margaret Atwood, to name a few. Her fiction tends to follow traditions both of American and English novels. Like her American counterparts, Desai sees deeply, darkly, privately, and like her English counterparts, her emphasis is on reality. This aspect was influenced by Virginia Woolf. Desai uses the stream of consciousness technique, flashbacks, and interior monologues with a view to capture the prismatic quality of life, a psychological realism, and an intensified impressionism in her fiction. Desai does not use any theory, nor does she lay any special emphasis on plot construction. As the story advances, she slides in her scenes, settings, and characters. The plot is always simple and neat. It is a direct reflection of life based on modernization of India, women's emancipation, and East West confrontation. Desai's novels and short stories evoke characters, events, and moods with recourse to a rich use of visual imagery and details, which has led to comparisons with T.S. Eliot, William Faulkner, and Virginia Woolf. As regards autobiographical element, Desai says it is inevitable. She considers Clear Light of the Day her most autobiographical novel because she writes about her neighborhood in Delhi, although characters are not based on her siblings. Childhood memories are discussed in detail, but her fiction cannot be categorized or classified. Her novels do not have heroic characters, whether male or female. Yet, Desai claims that, I open a quote, my characters who appear like losers victims show a kind of heroism of survival. I think if you can come through the experience of life with the heart and mind intact without compromising yourself, that to me is a heroic act that needs to be celebrated. I close the quote here. Her characters often meet tragic endings. Desai is unlike Mulk Raj Anand and R.K. Narayan, whose concerns are larger. She creates a small world of milieu. Her narrative skill is limited. Things and objects, however small, are given significance. Her novels have Indian setting, culture, and background. Her younger female characters imitate Western culture but are unsuccessful, while the elder generation adheres to Indian culture. Her novels have neurotic females, sensitive, alienated, and unwilling to adjust with reality. They want to be free from social and familial involvement. Coming to her themes, she endeavors to introduce a modern psychological vein wherein action is subordinated to psychology. The central theme revolves around mental developments of characters, not on their physical adventures. The theme is human relationships governed by existential tones, be it theme of love or marriage, east-west confrontation, and loss of senses. Existentialism is her favorite subject. Now let us discuss briefly her novels. Her first novel, Cry the Peacock, comments on the disharmony between a couple and is a psychological novel. It is the story of a young girl, Maya, obsessed by a childhood prophecy of disaster. Maya and Gotham reveal their problem with emphasis. Maya is married to an older man, twice her age, Gotham, a reputed lawyer. Maya is emotional, delicate, and sensitive, while her husband is detached, sober, and industrious. Maya rejects the detachment theory of Gita, is a born artist, overflowing with sensuous intensity. Gotham is an intellectual and has no inclination towards these traits. This contrast is disastrous, leading in Gotham's death and Maya's subsequent suicide. This marriage was imposed on them, hence, it did not last. The novel reminds the reader of Lawrence's Sons and Lovers. Maya's tendency to be dependent on her father and later on her husband is to guard against the onslaught of a hostile world. She suffers a spiritual death owing to incompatibility and marital disharmony. Desai's second novel, Voice in the City, is based on alienation or the loss of identity, owing to the terror of facing assaults of existence. The story revolves around three young intellectuals and siblings, Nirod, Monisha, and Amla, who have lost their way in contemporary India. The protagonist, Nirod, faces failure after failure. Monisha, his sister, also faces the same fate, being married against her will to a blind moralist, Jiban. Her life becomes a prison, leading to an incurable claustrophobia. She opts for death and commits suicide. The third character, Amla, is an extrovert leading a merry life with the painter Dharma, but in vain. This novel, in stream of consciousness technique, delineates the struggle of middle class people with brutal forces. The characters in their struggles, dreams, and disappointments represent our times. Desai has projected the silence, solitude, and dark world of shadows which has enveloped her characters. Anyway, this novel is more realistic than her first novel. As the spokesman of uh, the modern Indian youth, Desai is at her best in this novel. In Voice in the City, the dilemma of the three major characters is socio-psychological, being victims of alienation and existential problem. The image of Calcutta is the most dominant image pervading the novel, being described as a monster city, a dead city, a deluged city, poised city, horrible city. The title of the novel is also existentialist in its nature, depicting the voice of a single person as unheard and therefore useless. Now we come to the third novel, Bye Bye Blackbird, written in vivid narrative and chiseled prose, which deals with themes of East West encounter and marital discord. Desai describes an episode of acclimatization of two men from India in post colonial London. Adit and Sarah, his English wife, lead a happy life in the United Kingdom. Dev, his friend from Calcutta, arrives in England to stay with them. It gathers that Adit has been unhappy all the while, and to make matters worse, Dev decides to stay there. After marriage, Adit and Sarah are apprehensive of rejection, pity, and distrust from their own people. Sarah is sensitive and endures agonies and therefore longs for freedom. Adit and Dev tolerate humiliations in England. Desai describes problems of Indian immigrants and interracial marriages. She endorses Kipling's view that East is East and West is West and the twain shall never meet. In her next novel, Where Shall We Go This Summer, the central theme hovers on emotion, instinct, feeling, and reason, presenting boredom and loneliness experienced by married women when they are dejected and feel unwanted. The protagonist Sita is one such married woman, as her daughter Menka wants to be a scientist while her sons quarrel among themselves, and her husband Raman, a factory owner, ignores her throughout the novel. This creates a gulf between the couple. She goes to an island, Manari, determined to abort her fifth child in order to isolate herself from daily chores. But Raman visits her and she returns to Bombay with him to again face harsh realities of mundane existence. The novel ends leaving her in a traumatic state of mind, a loser who failed in her endeavors to end her anguish and agony. Her fate resembles the fate of Savitri, the heroine of R.K. Narayan's famous novel The Dark Room. Savitri also faces domestic harmony. Fire on the Mountain, Desai's fifth novel, mainly deals with loneliness and isolation, as well as the resultant anguish and agony in the deserted life of an old woman. The novel curiously deals with women characters, the aged Nanda Kaul, Raka, and Ela Das. After the death of her vice chancellor husband, Nanda lives in the foothills of Himalayas, leading an isolated existence. Raka, her granddaughter, joins her. Nanda starts liking her as Raka is so much like her. Through the long summer months, hidden dependencies and old wounds are uncovered. The third character, Ela Das, is friendly, who endeavors to eradicate social evils which results in her tragic death. The grim reality of Ela Das's rape and murder shatters the unreality of Nanda Kaul's projected reverie. The firelight on the mountain stands for the funeral pyre that consumes and ruins everything. Her next novel, Clear Light of the Day, is set in Old Delhi and describes tensions in a post partition Indian family, starting with the characters as adults and moving back into their lives through the course of the novel. It describes development of four children, two young girls, Bim and Tara take care of the parents, a retarded brother, and an alcoholic aunt. Tara marries and settles abroad. Raja, the elder brother, marries a Muslim and settles in Hyderabad. Bim handles the retarded Baba alone. Clear light of the day is, I open the inverted commas, about time as a destroyer, as a preserver, and about what the bondage of time does to people. Close the inverted commas. This theme of time in relation to eternity is inspired by T.S. Eliot's Four Quarters. Desai's popular novel The Village by the Sea, subtitled An Indian Family, is based on the poverty, hardship, and sorrow faced by a small rural community in India and is basically a novel meant for children. Desai depicts freshness and innocence of villages which acts as a balm to bruised mind. It centers around a family duped of money in exchange of a job. The father thinks of improving his finances, hoping to get work in a factory built in his village. Desai gives the message that curse of property can be removed by industrialization. All's well that ends well. Father, mother, Leela, Hari, Kamal, and Bela celebrate family union and ties, grateful for the positive changes in their lives. Her much discussed novel, In Custody, a comedy drama, revolves around an Indian university teacher who encounters endless hassles in his endeavors to document final writings of an ailing alcoholic poet whom he adores. In 1993, it was made into a film directed by Ismail Merchant with screenplay by Anita Desai. The movie is loaded with metaphors proclaiming end of Urdu poetry. The protagonist is unimpressive and unassertive teacher Devin, who wants to create an extraordinary piece of work but is badly defeated, making him a depressed person. The novel shifts between his success and failure and the final disaster. Murad, childhood friend of Devin, is a manipulative character using his wealth to trap Devin. Desai has cast two strong female characters, Devin's wife Salah and Imtiaz Begum. Another strong character is Noor, protector of Urdu poetry. Desai's next work, Journey to Ithaca, takes its name from a poem by Cavafy and describes a pilgrimage to India by a young couple, an Italian, Matteo, and a German, Sophie. Another mysterious woman, Laila, runs the ashram where they live. She is commonly called the Mother. Spiritual India is projected as a sort of Ithaca. The novel develops a theme that Desai explored in an early story, Scholar and Gypsy. The couple are based on the adventures of hippies. Sophie, who has deserted her husband Matthew, comes to fetch her husband and forms the center of the story. The novel also portrays the anguish of Indians who sell spirituality abroad. All in all, this work is a significant addition to Desai's novel. Ithaca is a Greek island to the west of Greece. It is the home of Ulysses. I have added this. We now come to fasting, feasting, her magnum opus, shortlisted for the Booker Prize, which tells the tale of a close knit, traditional, middle class Indian family and the fates of the family's children. The novel is written in two parts. Gerald Kaufman says, I open a very famous quote, if we could have chosen a runner up, we would undoubtedly have given the runner up award to Anita Desai and Fasting Feasting a most beautiful novel, very moving, very funny, terribly illustrative to what happens to women in different parts of the world. Close the quote. That speaks volumes about fasting feasting. Claustrophobic feminine existentialism being the theme is presented through the characters of four females Uma, Aruna, Anamika, and Melanie. Uma's life is full of shocks. She gets married to a much older man who was already married and returns to her parental home as a divorcee. Aruna, the younger sister, is a typical example of unsuccessful cultural hybridization who cannot even provide guidance to her own children. Anamika, another sister of Uma, is pleasant, but her marriage was a fiasco and leads to her tragic death. Her parents said, open the inverted comma, that is fate, God had willed it, and it was Anamika's destiny. Close the quote. Melanie is an introvert and a neglected girl. She shuns company and prefers to stay alone. In her loneliness, she overeats candy. The mental disorders of Uma and Melanie stem from a desire to be understood. The title is symbolic. Some characters are feasting with joy, others are fasting, leading to their own destruction. Hence, the novel's thread is woven around socio familial intrigues in post independent India and is Anita Desai's most famous novel. Now, let us take up the zigzag way, which shifts to foreign locales. And it's about an American academic writer, Eric, who goes with his girlfriend Emily to Mexico and rediscovers his passion for fiction writing. Desai gives vivid descriptions of Mexico's culture and traditions. Eric explores Mexico to develop his skills as a fiction writer. The plot then turns to Eric's grandfather. Towards the end of the novel, Eric attends a local festival where he meets a spirit who shows him a glimpse of the future. The Zigzag Way, thus, is a magical novel which shows that the path of characters can be navigated by referring to the past and understanding one's ancestors. Baumgartner's Bombay, the next novel under discussion, is set in Berlin, Venice, Calcutta, and Bombay. All post colonial writers are obsessed with Bombay and Calcutta, it appears. The story revolves around Hugo Baumgartner, who is somewhat dark in appearance for Hitler's Germany and rather fair for our country, India. He has lost his parents in the Nazi regime but escapes and lands in India. The wandering Jew lives in the country only to be disturbed by war and subsequent partition. Finally, he settles in Bombay, our Mumbai. He is a kind, hapless old man who goes around the numerous tea shops to scavenge for his pet cats. On a fateful day, on his regular outings, he meets a surly young German at Café du Paris. This man is a hippie who changes his life drastically. It is a classic novel of the Holocaust era, and like all novels dealing with the aftermath of war, it reflects the tragic view of life. Thus, the novel explores German and Jewish identity in the context of contemporary India. The last work of Anita Desai, The Artist of Disappearance, is a 2011 collection of three novellas set in contemporary India dealing with regional history and tradition. The trilogy is reminiscent of Jhumpa Lahiri. The opening story, The Museum of Final Journey, is narrated by a government bureaucrat who visits an old mansion in an inspection but cannot do much. Translator Translated is the second novella revolving around Prema Joshi, an Indian teacher who is a failed writer. She writes stories but discovers she has lost her narrative skills. The title story rounds out the collection. It is the story of Ravi, a neglected child who preferred outdoor life. After his parents' death, he returns home and spends all his time in the company of plants. A film crew visits him, but Ravi refuses to meet them. Instead, Ravi collects matchboxes, filling them with bits of nature. The crew returns without interviewing Ravi as they feel the images of artwork are meaningless. All these stories move beyond cities to places haunted by the past. The novellas reflect a culture caught between centuries of tradition and the new forces of capitalism. The three stories are a reminder of what has been lost in the race of modernity and linked by a passion for arts. They are about the selves that dare to hope, that desperately want to be different, but which sink back and disappear into mediocrity. However, the stories themselves fail to impress. The endings are abrupt, though beautifully written, but ultimately disappointing. The air of melancholy pervading is also nerve shattering. Let us just know what defines a novella. A novella is neither as lengthy as a novel nor as short as a story. It is derived from the Italian novella and means new. It is widely popular genre in many European languages. Novellas normally do not have chapters, hence they are not as popular as novels. Thus, Anita Desai incorporates the agony of existence, metaphysical void, psychological fears, and traumas instilled in her characters, which immobilize their self realization. It is for this reason she restrains from commenting on social or historical issues and restricts to psychological novels. She traces the inner recesses of human heart, focusing on cerebral depths. Her works reflect that roots of reality reside in the dark alleys of a psyche. Dorothy Richardson, James Joyce, and Virginia Woolf in the West, and Anita Desai and Arun Joshi in the East follow this tradition. Being influenced by Emily Bronte, Virginia Woolf, D.H. Lawrence, and Henry James, she too repeats the same psychological themes, narrowing her language to the interior. Jane Austen too wrote about the inner world of her characters, as we all know. Desai's fiction depicts mood and inner conflicts raging in her characters. Her emphasis is solely on form, pattern, rhythm, and vision. Her psychological novels therefore deal with images suggesting isolation. And characters often think in images, whether it is a cry of a peacock in the novel of the same name, or the city of death, Calcutta, in Voice in the City, or the local of Manuri Island in Where Shall We Go This Summer. Her hue of color symbols depict duality of existence. She uses black and white in Cry the Peacock. Red symbolizes Maya's love for a colorful life. In Voice in the City, she again uses black. In Where Shall We Go This Summer, dark hues are dominant. Her outstanding feature remains presentation of sensitive female characters, many afflicted with neurotic traits on the verge of psychological breakdowns, though they are educated from well to do backgrounds and from all age groups. Still, they yearn to break free and be assertive, just as Dostoevsky, Proust, James Joyce, Henry James, and Virginia Woolf. She concentrates on alienated women characters. To sum up, one can say that Desai area of specialization is the psyche of her characters. She paints sensitive, poetic pictures. All social and historical concerns are pushed backstage and individuals' inner recesses are dealt upon. As a psychologist, her contribution to novel writing is superb. Desai has a penchant for exploring men-women relationship, their discord, incompatibility, lack of communication, theme of isolation, tragic deaths, and helplessness. I conclude with these words. I hope you will benefit from my brief lecture on Anita Desai. This lecture would be a boon for PG students, NET students, UPSC and UPPSC aspirants. Thanks for listening. All the best.